Welcome to the Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change podcast. My name is Michael Flores, and I will be your host while we explore the complex journey of divorce with empathy, insight, and practical knowledge. Whether you're contemplating separation, in a divorce, or looking for support post-divorce, our episodes provide expert guidance, stories, and strategies to help you through every step of the process. We are actual therapists, helping clients who sit on our couches every day through their difficulties of divorce. You are not alone. Join us as we delve in and find solutions that give you hope again. We're glad you're here.
This podcast is not intended to replace legal or personal help. This podcast is for informational purposes only.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to Beyond Divorce, Embracing Change. I'm here with Armando, and we're going over the trust formula today.
Yes, we are.
So tell Armando, maybe you can start with just telling me where this came from.
So the trust formula came out of working with reunification with kids and their parents, getting them to feel comfortable to trust their parent again. So as we were having discussions with what trust is, like how important it is, I kind of broke it down into a couple of things. And so that all our listeners know, the trust formula is consistency plus predictability over time equals trust.
Over time.
And so it's important to understand how important trust is throughout all our lives, right? It's the basis of everything we do, right? I trust that when I give you my credit card that you're going to use it, you're going to use the chip and charge me the appropriate amount of money that it is, and I'm going to have, and you're going to trust that I have money on my card when I give it to you.
Correct.
Right? I trust that every month I'm going to receive a paycheck for all the hard work that I do. I'm going to trust that the other drivers on the road are following the laws and the rules of the road.
Yeah.
We put a lot of trust into everything we do. And so thinking about not just with families and relationships, but everything we do, consistency and predictability over time really does create that trust for us.
Yeah, and I think we're in a time in society where information is such an overflow, it's hard to know who to trust or what to trust. And so many people look at everything so cynically. And then if there's hurt on top of that, if you've hurt me in some way, or we got hurt, or there was an absence where there was a gap, there's another layer of trust there. So let's just take it beyond hurt, Armando. What about the times when there's a gap of time, maybe a parent doesn't have time with a kid and there's a gap? How does that affect the trust?
So that, again, taking it back to eighth grade math, right? You remove that factor out of that equation, so then your numbers are going to be messed up, right? Your formula, your trust isn't going to be as solid or as accurate. So that's why that over time is important. Now, depending on the relationship and the foundation prior to that, you might need a little bit of time. You might need a longer amount of time. It really just varies in terms of what your relationship looks like with each person.
So Piaget, if I remember correctly, had a formula here about how kids go through. It's the lifespan. Was it Piaget or was it Erickson? It's Erickson's model of stages of development.
They both had stages.
They did have stages.
Both had, yeah. I think Piaget just had the children. And I think Erickson had the...
What did they say from 0 to 4, if I remember correctly?
It's the discovery and it's not. Was it trust or?
I thought it was trust versus mistrust, but I think that's Erickson.
I think that's Erickson. I'm gonna have to look that up.
I know. I'm going back to my psych days. But if I remember correctly, I think it was trust versus mistrust from Erickson's model of lifespan.
I think you're right.
From 0 to 4. So that literally means, what's the first thing we develop as human beings?
Trust, right? Is this safe to touch? Is this a safe person? If I'm crying, right? I know that my mom's going to come pick me up or my dad's going to come pick me up.
Exactly.
That's the basis of everything. And when that trust is broken, whether that's in a relationship with a romantic relationship with a partner, with a work colleague, with whatever government, with whatever it is, we have to look at how are we going to rebuild that trust with everybody.
100%. So why don't we go through the formula? You mentioned that it was consistency, predictability over time.
Yes.
Correctly? So it's 1 + 1 equals.
It's consistency plus predictability over time equals trust. So think of it think of it instead of like dividing it by time, like over time, think of it as more of like the parentheses. My math, our math teachers and our
parent thesis.
Yes, they'll know what that. Hopefully they'll understand, and if not, feel free to write in.
There you go. Yeah, this plus this parentheses, right? Consistency plus predictability parentheses
over time
equals
trust.
The T word, trust. Got it. Okay. So what are we wanting the listeners to understand? So you've now told us the formula. Help us understand these components.
Yeah, let's break down. So consistency. If I say consistency to you, what do you think of? What pops into your head?
For me, consistency is doing something the same way all the time. So if I always sit in this chair on the podcast every time, if you naturally walk in this room, you're not probably going to sit in this chair because I consistently sit in it.
Right.
Is that
kind of? I mean, I think that falls under predictability a little bit. Consistency for me, and see how they're very similar.
Yeah.
So consistency, I think, is showing up, right? So knowing that when we have podcast recording days, that you're going to be here when I walk in, right? Like you constantly show up. That I'm going to show up to do the podcast. That we're going to show up. You're going to show up to your kid's baseball game or basketball game every time, right?
Now, how important is that, especially if you told them?
It becomes even more important.
What do you mean?
Because that's where we talk about promises, right? Like promises, I promise this, you create that. And broken promises, that's one of the biggest ways to destroy trust, right? If I say this and I show up, if I say I'm going to show up and I constantly don't show up, that makes it hard too.
You know, I heard someone say, and I don't know who it was, so I can't quote them, but they said that a lot of relationships break down from unfulfilled expectations.
Yes. Because it's those small things over time that I expected this and you never showed up, or you didn't rise to the occasion of that.
Wow. Does this come up in therapy?
All the time. All the time.
What when you work through that with these kids and these parents, through that piece in particular, what do you find is most, I guess, what works the most?
I think being honest about what's going on, explaining what the situation was and why you couldn't show up if there was a reason.
Thinking about yourself. This is why I couldn't.
This is why I couldn't.
This is what I couldn't.
This is what I was unable to fulfill, right? Or this is what's sad is more important than this situation going on. I had to prioritize other things, which is hard to hear sometimes. But if I'm prioritizing work because I have to pay for your baseball game, I have to pay the food to feed you so that you have the energy for the baseball game, right? Because
you want Prime, you don't want Gatorade.
No, exactly. Right.
Or
Powerade. Yeah, I was like, I don't want Powerade.
Powerade. I like Powerade. That's also the red one.
That's, you want your General Mill, what is it? The Walmart brand?
General Mills?
It's not General Mills. That's the company. Anyways.
Good value. Good value. Yeah, you want that brand?
No. I mean,
the Capri Suns were good.
I've never had theirs. But
no, I'm saying not. Yeah, never mind.
Consistently, right? If consistently we are going to get off track, and our listeners expect that, right? So we become consistent
about being off track.
Sometimes.
Okay.
And consistent, but to that point though, consistency is not always a good thing. Sometimes it is a bad thing, right? Because sometimes
consistently doing it bad. So can that same formula work then? You said consistency, predictability over time equals trust. But does it also work with mistrust?
It gets perverted, right? It gets changed up that way.
What do you mean?
Yes. So it depends on what we're looking at, right? So because these components are, what are we looking at? Are we looking at the positives of these components or the negative?
There it is. Yeah.
It's all about mindset.
You consistently never showed up. I could bank on the fact that you would never show up. This happened for 4 years of my life.
Over time.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Mistrust.
There's mistrust. Exactly.
So if you're doing it the right way, so maybe we need to talk about those components of here's the right way, the positive way to fill in that form. So
it is both. It's one of those things. It's a tool that you can use for good or for bad, depending on how you want to use it.
Exactly. It's all in that most everything. Like a hammer's great, but you can hurt somebody with a hammer.
You sure can.
You can also build.
You can build a home, or you can destroy a home. Mm-hmm.
With a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Same tool.
Same thing.
Got it.
So that's consistency, always showing up. Predictability is aligning your words and your actions. So if I say I'm going to do something, I do something.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of aligning.
Say and what you do match.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the level of integrity, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That creates that that integrity. And it's not even just actions. It's behavioral, it's emotional, it's patience, it's routine and structure.
Nice. The predictability is, I think a lot of people miss that part.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm consistent. I always tell them I love them.
But do you always do that, right? How often do you?
How do you fulfill that? How are you fulfilling I love you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that next piece.
Because growing up every night, my dad would tell me good night, right, without fail, or my mom would come in and check on me. Like I could bank on that, I could bank on what's going on. And kids and spouses, everybody, that's what we look for. Are you predictable, right? Is that consistent? Or are you showing up?
So this is actually like a relationship trust formula.
Yes, I think so.
That's awesome. Can we talk about marriage and relationships and how this plays into that?
Absolutely.
Let's go into that.
So when you start dating somebody, right? You start dating somebody, what is one of the first things? Are they going to show up? Like if you get stood up,
do they look like the picture?
Well, I mean, yeah. Are they predictable?
I haven't dated in forever.
Are they predictable? Is their picture matching who they are? That picture was from 10 years ago. If I look that way, a little gray hair and a little bit extra pounds, not matching the photo. Is that consistent?
That's starting it off bad right there.
But it's not consistent.
Okay, right.
Or, you know what? Your picture and who you are in front of me matches.
Right.
Consistent, right? Consistency. Did you show up? Did you stand me up? Is it predictable? Every time we schedule a date, you're 45 minutes late. That's predictable. Or you're an hour early, you're 10 minutes early, maybe not an hour early, but you're 5 minutes early. Predictable.
Yeah. We actually tell if my family's listening to any of these podcasts, they're going to learn my trick. I always tell them like 30 minutes earlier than the time that it's supposed to be done. Because they've been so predictable and consistent with the fact that they always show up 30 minutes late.
Because you trust that I have to give you a little bit early time.
I have one cousin, I'll tell him the actual time because he always shows up on time. But I have all these other people in my family. I tell them 30 minutes before. So if it's at 1:30, I'll tell them 1.
I'm not going to say who I do that to in my family, but they know. If they're listening, shout out, hi.
Shout out, hi. Well, and that's what happens with consistency, right? We sometimes work around it because we know exactly probably.
Because we know who we're dealing with. We know what's going on. I mean, whether that's, and I've talked to kids about this, where like we can predict what your dad's going to do. We can predict what your mom's going to do. Given that, let's work with what we have.
Right.
We trust them that they're going to act this way, good or bad or indifferent, but this is how we respond.
We as therapists try to be those things, don't we? Predictable, consistent, right? They kind of see us what we get. I mean, I've been made fun of for not wearing my shoes in session how many times now?
A lot.
Consistently do it, don't I? And I think one person actually introduced me to a parent as the non-shoe therapist, or this is my no-shoe therapist guy or whatever. And I was sure enough, I meet the other parent barefoot, I'm talking like literally dogs out barefoot. I can have no socks on. And it's so funny to me, but doesn't it help just to be ourselves?
Yes.
And it develops this level of trust and security with our ability to work with our clients.
Because you're consistent, right? You're consistently without shoes on, right? You're consistently doing.
I've been doing better.
You are. No, I mean, you really have actually.
Yeah. Well, it's been the winter months, so.
But even when I used to work in schools, I used to talk to teachers and I'd say, you guys are probably the most consistent adult in some of these kids' lives.
Wow.
Because you show up every day. Their parents may not always do that. The people in their lives may not always do that. I didn't even think
about that.
And it extends to all aspects of our lives.
Yeah.
Right? Consistently, you are there. That's why, some of our clients, they want their 12 o'clock on Wednesday, every Wednesday, exactly, because they need that consistency.
Right.
And I will do my best to make that happen, but that is consistent.
How do we, gosh, this is a big topic. You wrote this down and I loved it. You talked about rebuilding things after betrayal. Like after there's been a betrayal of sorts, there's a rebuilding. What did you mean by that? So
specifically when we think about like marriage and relationships, I'm going to channel my inner Jacoby.
Love it.
Shout out to Jacoby.
Yes, for sure.
But when we think
Dr. R.
Dr. R.
Okay.
When we think about marriage and relationships and when there may be some infidelity or there may be mistrust, that is so hard to come back from.
100%.
And so what do we need to do, right? It's like, we'll have to check their phone all the time. What are you looking for when you're checking their phone all the time?
More betrayal.
Or are you looking for consistency? If you don't find that, right,
Yeah.
They're consistently saying, and they're being predictable. They're being where they're at. They created that routine. I'm going to call you when I leave work, and I'm going to show up because I have to rebuild that. That's where it becomes really important to think of consistency and predictability when you're trying to rebuild those relationships.
But have you found it in the betrayed party that when they're looking through the phone or whatever, they're just, and they see all the things they want to see, they're not also thinking they're just being better about keeping it hidden from me?
They do sometimes. Sometimes, it's that intention. It's that mindset of what am I going in there looking for?
Part of trust is mindset, you think?
I think a lot of it is do you have to give them the opportunity to be consistent and predictable.
Okay, so yeah, I want to say something on that. Do you feel, I'm asking you personally, do you feel that trust is earned or given?
I think it's a little bit of both, but you have to take the risk, and I'm going to say the word risk. I'm going to be very specific and intentional with that word. You have to take the risk to give somebody the opportunity to earn it. So I'm giving the risk, the opportunity.
Which means you have to be vulnerable.
I have to be vulnerable. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to earn it, right? Because, and I tell that, especially with kids that are worried about being reintroduced to their parents or they haven't seen them in a while, it's a big risk. And I tell them, you want them to change. You want to see all these changes, but you have to give them the opportunity to do that.
We give you the job, you earn the money.
I like that.
I give you the trust so that you can earn all the things that go into it, right? You can earn the consistency. You can earn, right? But I have to give you the opportunity to show.
You have to let me show you how to do that. And
yes, and after betrayal, it's hard to do that.
It is incredibly hard to do that. And I think that's another component about this formula is that you have to give the opportunity.
I think what I would encourage the person who's done the betrayal, if you've betrayed someone and you want their trust back, you have to speak to the betrayal. You have to go, you have no reason to trust me, and I understand why you don't. Like, you have to acknowledge the fact that that's happened. It's been broken because you're always trying to prove to them. But part of them has to also trust in you, right? Give you the opportunity to be trusted. And you're begging them to do that, but they're begging you, please don't hurt me with this.
Right.
Look at them from the perspective of they love you that much and care that much. They don't want to get hurt again. That's how painful the hurt that you've betrayed them with hurt them. And I think it's so important, and part of trust is to acknowledge that in them and say, you really don't have to have a reason to trust me. I probably don't even deserve your trust, in all honesty. The fact that you want to trust me and you're struggling with that, I see you.
I agree with that. I think
that's courage.
It's courage. And I think one of the things that I always encourage people when we talk about trust is it's those small deposits. It's those small things over time that make the biggest bang for your buck.
Can you give an example of some of those deposits?
Yeah. So, for example, I like metaphors because I don't know, I like metaphors, but like I also like to think of trust as like a bank account.
Yes. Right? Yes.
So, like, it's those small deposits over time that build up, right? I do just my own personal, I like do the like rollover kind of thing. So like if I pay, like 10 cents, I like 90 cents gets rolled into my savings account kind of thing. So it's like even. So it's those small deposits over time that adds into my bank account, right? It's the jar of coins that you put in there, and over time you have this
the jar of trust.
The jar of trust that you take, right? But it's those small deposits, and sometimes you take a withdrawal.
That's right.
And so you have enough, and you're like, okay, you have a withdrawal. Then you withdraw a little bit more. Well, you take a big enough withdrawal and you don't have enough trust. What happens? If your bank account, if you go over withdrawal, what happens?
Oh, there's a penalty.
There's a penalty, right? You're in the negative. And not only do you have to pay back to get to zero, you have to do extra to get back to even where you were.
You got to pay with interest.
And then there's another fee. And if you don't do it fast enough. But if we have trust, sometimes we have credit and we can spend our credit.
Goodness gracious.
So, I mean, but trust is the basis of really everything. And if you think about that, those small withdrawals add up. And especially in relationships and marriage, it's those small withdrawals, both deposits and withdrawals. You have to be mindful of that.
How does this show up in, I just had a meeting about reunifying, right? Like we talked about reunification. How does a parent who's reconciling a relationship with their child after a divorce, how do they develop either a new trust or maintain a trust they've had? Because a lot of times they feel it's been broken by external factors.
I think what it is you remain predictable. of how you were before as best you can.
Yes.
Right? Just because you're not in the same home, or mom's not in the same home, or you're not in the same home, or you're not seeing them every day, when you do, are you still being the same version that they know you to be from before?
Yeah.
Michael, how many times have you heard like, oh, my dad changed after they married my stepmom, or my mom changed after they married my stepdad?
I hear it all the time.
Right? Their mental model, their predictability of who their parent is not matching. Their actions aren't matching like it used to.
Yeah, the person I remember was this, and the person I'm being shown is this.
So then it questions the consistency. And as time goes, it becomes that mistrust. Or the reverse, right? Oh, they're the same person that they've always been.
Well, then you see a tug of war of both of them trying to pull each other into their change. I want you to fit into my experience of what I remember you as. No, I want you to fit into my experience of who I am. Or don't forget who I was. I'm still that person.
But you have to show that.
Oh.
So I do this exercise with pretty much everybody that comes into my office, where I ask them, like, we do a little mini strengths exercise and strengths exploration, and I list all their strengths. And I always tell them, your job is to remember to be this person and add to this list. So as you do that, you are consistently being you, and you're not letting other people take that from you. And I think that's something to remember for us individually,
right,
that we need to be consistent of who we are, and we need to be predictable with ourselves.
Right.
I mean, sometimes people struggle, they have their own issues, and they become inconsistent with themselves and unpredictable with their actions. I can't believe I did that. I can't believe I'm doing this. And so even the trust in ourselves kinds of comes in question. So this formula is pretty universal and you can use it. You can kind of think about it and using it in all sorts of different ways.
What are some examples of ways that you hope people would use this?
I mean, I really hope that people would use it to really think about how their actions match their words.
Yes.
How their internal values, their external values match what they're doing and what they're saying. And that if you're off kilter a little bit, you're not congruent, you're not matching, that it's okay. Janan likes to say, give yourself grace.
She does.
And I think that's really important.
I think parents' biggest complaints is how they're being seen versus the way they want to be seen.
Well, how are you showing?
How are you showing up?
How are you showing up? Right? I mean, I told that to, I don't know how many times you get it on a hat, right? Like, the best thing you can be is just be a good parent.
You know, this is really sad. I just thought of this. If how you're being seen is not the version of how you want to be seen, and you come and tell me that the way this child sees you is based on the influence of another parent, that means their words are stronger than your actions. How in the hell, excuse my language, did that other parent get that much power with their words over your actions?
They had more trust, right? I trust what this other parent says about you more than I trust you.
Oh.
And the only way to break that is to show them over time that you are consistent and predictable, and this is who you are.
I don't even know if there's any more to be said after that. I think that's pretty like right on the money.
I mean, it really is. I really do think, right, how do you want to come across? It's really up to you, and you be consistent and predictable. But I think the very first thing is you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with who you are and what you're presenting.
Yeah, you're talking about, when you say honest with yourself, I'm hearing, let me just say what I'm hearing. Mm-hmm. I'm hearing you say being authentic and genuine.
But I think you also have to know what the authentic, genuine version of you is.
It's a scary person. A lot of people don't want to know that person is. Don't we wear hats and put on masks all the time?
We do, but guess what? You take that off in the evening, and maybe even you don't, but it's going to catch up to you.
Yeah, what was the Chinese proverb? There's 3 masks. You know, one we show the world, one we show just significant others, friends, family, spouses maybe, and then the other mask we only show to like maybe one other person. But then there's beneath all that, there's this real person, something like that. I don't remember. I gotta go back and look. I might be misquoting it.
You got a good Instagram. Your Instagram reel.
Oh, you like my reel?
Your Instagrams look different than mine. Your Instagram feed has different stuff than mine does.
I'm not trying to quote Instagram, but
I'm just saying.
It's okay. Plug it in.
Although now I have a social media idea, trust formula. Someone write that down.
It's a great one.
Someone write that down.
It's a great one. And I like what you said today, going back to what you said in the trust formula. I like that you said it's about how you use it.
Mm-hmm.
Because like any tool, you can use it the wrong way. And I love that you've ended it with, you be honest with yourself, because that's how you're going to learn how to use the tool the correct way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I remember my grandpa told me not to not to be so smart. He was really calling me stupid, but
Mhm.
because I was trying to nail in a screw.
Ah.
And he walks over with the right tool. He goes, "Hey, son," he goes, "try with this." And so it's just, I mean, you can take a screw and nail it in if you want to.
Can.
But boy, it didn't feel as easy as, just going, or with a drill or whatever.
Mhm.
My grandpa he used to always say, "Oh, don't be so smart, son. Let me show you something. And let me learn you something," as he might say it.
Mhm.
He wouldn't say, my dad even reminded me of that this morning. He said, our Weethel, as we called him, he didn't say, let me teach you something. Let me learn you something.
Let me learn you.
Yeah, learning mean like you pick up on it, right? It becomes part of you. And this is something that others can learn, and I think they have to understand how to use the tool. So I'm so glad that you said, start with trust, start with being honest with yourself first,
Mhm.
so that you can actually use the formula for something that's helpful. Can I ask this? How would you hope this would show up either in couples work, co-parenting work, or even reunification work?
I think first it's the openness and the opportunity to let somebody try and show them, and vice versa. Say, like, are you consistent, right? Because it goes both ways.
Yeah.
It is just as scary being a partner that, maybe there was some mistrust.
Yeah.
It's just as scary of me letting you in to kind of show me as it is being like, you're giving me this responsibility and I have to show, right? That grace kind of comes back into play.
Wow.
It's as scary for a parent that, okay, I don't want to mess up because I love you and I haven't seen you in a month or 5 months or 6 months.
I'm scared to be your parent
I'm scared
right
to
now.
be your parent because I don't know how it's going to come across.
Right.
It's also terrifying because I don't know who this parent, I haven't seen this parent in a while. Are they mad at me because I haven't seen them?
Parents want grace too. So like if I say something and it bothers you or upsets you, can you give me an opportunity to work on that with you first? Right? Before you triangulate the system and you run over the other parent. And yeah, I mean, it's parents want the grace, but so do the kids.
Yeah.
They're having to navigate things too. I think parents probably try not to intend on doing this, but forget about where the kid is in that process. And the kids, the trust with the children is so super important, isn't it? You said that earlier, and I think that probably hit home when you said that if the other parents' words are much stronger than the actions you're showing them, that means their words are more influential than your actions.
Mm-hmm. They trust that. They trust those words more than they trust your actions.
That was heavy. And so then I go, if I'm a parent interviewing you, I would ask you, so how do I change that?
Be consistent, be predictable, and over time, we can talk about that child giving you the opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
I do that all the time where I'm like, okay, you had a small dinner with dad. How did it go? It went well. Okay. It went well. What went well? Was he consistent and predictable?
Oh, you actually go through it.
Oh, I actually do this in session, especially with children. We'll actually scale consistency and predictability individually with a kid, and then I'll like add it up.
How has that made a difference in the therapy?
The kids, when they have their interactions with their parents, they're looking for the positives of things. They're looking for where that is happening as opposed to where they're missing, where they're messing up, and having that conversation with that parent so that they're intentional with showing that they're being consistent and predictable. They're showing up. They're not breaking promises. They're following through.
That's wonderful.
And it's the same thing in couples work.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we think the listeners need to take away from this conversation?
I think it's kind of a large, broad topic, but I think when you think about trust in your own life, whatever that looks like with work, with spouse, with children, kind of catch yourself being, am I being consistent? Am I being predictable? Is this the person that you trust the most in your life? How did they get there? I would wager they probably were consistent and predictable over time.
At some level.
On some level.
They were there. That's wonderful. Armando, I can't thank you enough. This formula, I hope that you and I can just keep formulating it.
That's all what you did there.
You like that?
Yeah.
I want to do this more. You guys always come up with really unique ways of finding these little components within people and creating these little millimeter shifts, right? That transition people where they are to where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so uniquely done. And I don't think you guys do it like anyone else. I've met a lot of people, talked to a lot of therapists, talked to a lot of courts and judges and attorneys and who you name it. I've been around lots of people, and I just, this is the stuff I'm talking about. Like, this is, I didn't see this in a book. I haven't seen this in a book.
I hope it's not, and I took it from somebody. So if I did, I apologize. Write in and comment.
Write in and comment.
Comment.
Well, no, I just haven't seen it. And so what I'm saying is it's impressive. All it does is make me go, there's more to be done and there's more to build on. And if we could formulate it in a way that it becomes really simple for people to understand and learn and utilize as a tool to be helpful and to grow, because you're right, people could use it the wrong way, then I think we're onto something. And thank you for sharing this with everyone. Like, you could have kept this private. You could have been doing this in the sessions. We didn't know what the heck you're doing. We just watch people walk out different every time they leave. And you decided to say, no, I want to share this knowledge with people and say this is important to keep in mind as you move forward through your relationships in any capacity.
Well, I hope our listeners, they learn. I hope they found this meaningful. I hope this was helpful for them.
They usually let us know. And if it's not, they probably tell us that too.
Let us know. So leave a comment.
Yeah, we want to know, right?
We want to know. Let us know.
Well, I've had some people come in the office and say, please don't stop doing the podcast. So that's been kind. And if I had someone that says, please stop doing the podcast, they're probably not going to listen. I'll just be honest about it. I can be honest with myself. I want to just continue to get information out to help people. We did this to serve people we may never meet, and the ones we do meet, we'll help them directly. So thank you for doing this, Armando. It's always great to have you here. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and we want you to keep moving forward.